Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Nonstop Talking with your girl here, Vivian Liu. Recently I posted the worst movies and TV shows I watched in 2021. So today I am doing the worst books I read in 2021. I would say like this year I didn't there's no memorable book of like, oh, I hated it. I felt like most of them were just like, they disappointed me somehow. So this is going to be a countdown from like the least disappointing to the most disappointing. I have about 10 titles to discuss, so let's get started. At number 10 is You Can Make a Life by Taylor Fitzpatrick. This year I read Thrown Off the Ice by this author and fell in love. I love that book a lot, and so I decided to pick up more from this author. And Thrown Off the Ice, sorry, I meant You Could Make a Life. It just didn't vibe with me. We have Dan, who is a rookie NHL ice hockey player. He secretly has feelings for Mark, who is his teammate, and it's like increasingly awkward because Mark is also his roommate for away games. Overall, this book was just very boring to me, especially the first half. I found it really dull, and I felt like the only reason why I was able to finish it was because it was so short. And to think that it was so short and like I was struggling to finish it is kind of like, wow, you know? And I thought the main character was a little annoying, so it was like difficult to read from his perspective. The relationship felt a little forced, although the couple had like their very sweet and tender moments that you're just like, oh, it wasn't enough to negate the fact that like it was kind of boring. At number 9 is The Past and Other Things That Should Stay Buried by Sean David Hutchison. I loved We Are the Ants by this author. It was my favorite book the year that I read it. I think, was it 2019? Yes, it was 2019. So I have always said that I needed to read more from this author because of how much I loved We Are the Ants. And sadly, this book just didn't bring that same magic. In this book, Dino's ex-best friend July comes back from the dead, and she's kind of like a zombie, and they try to figure out like how to keep her dead, and also why their friendship fell apart the way that it did. Honestly, this book just wasn't my cup of tea. And I feel like maybe one of the reasons why is because I'm not a big fan of like zombie books, maybe. In addition, I couldn't relate to Dino or July, so it was really hard for me to sympathize with their broken friendship and the issues that they were going through. And I think this book tries really hard to be comedic, like funny zombies, but I wasn't laughing. I didn't think it was funny. All in all, it just wasn't my cup of tea. I like how the trend right now is that like I love the first book I read from one author, and then the second book I pick up from them did not work out well. I don't know if that's like gonna be the continued trend for this disappointing list. At number 8 is Fireworks by Katie Cotugno. I've never read a Katie Cotugno book before, but I feel like I will give her book a second chance. Like I'll pick up something else from her. Do you get that feeling like sometimes as an adult when you read YA, there are certain YA that just reads really young? Like it's kind of telling you you're too old to be reading YA. That's how I felt reading Fireworks. Like this was just not for me at all. In Fireworks, we have Dana and Olivia. Dana and Olivia are like best friends, and Dana accompanies Olivia to a singing audition, and they both pass through to the next round, and it puts a strain on their relationship or friendship because this has always been Olivia's dream, and Dana has always been the tag along, and now they're both like vying for the same dream. To sum it up, I didn't like the portrayal of female friendship in this. I didn't like either of the main characters, Dana or Olivia. I felt that the romance was very lackluster. The love triangle was very lukewarm. Like, nothing in this really like wowed me, punched me, or like made me want to like it. Like, it really is just that feeling of like, I'm a jaded adult reading a YA and this is just not for me. Not to say that I like should stop reading YA books, because there are some that I still love. It's just this one didn't work for me. Number 7 is The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. Sometimes Christina Lauren books just slap. You know, they're just so good. And other times we get The Honey Don't List. And I just did not like The Honey Don't List, and I felt that it was also like very boring. This book is set with the backdrop of a home renovation show kind of thing, and we have two characters, James and Carrie. Carrie is the assistant of the wife for the show, Melissa, and James, although technically is an engineer, he's just more so a glorified assistant to the husband, Rusty. The two assistants catch Rusty cheating on Melissa, and now the assistants have to follow the couple during their book tour to make sure that, you know, Rusty keeps it in his pants, Melissa keeps her temper, so that they can pretend for the sales and the show and the viewership and all. I feel like the common theme with why I don't like books is if there's no one character I can like support, or I find like loving or endearing, or somehow like there has to be some character I like for whatever reason, and I just didn't care for Carrie or James in this. And this is told in like dual perspective, so when either of them came and it was like their turn to talk, I was just like, I don't care. Sprinkled throughout the story, there are like police interviews and police investigation, so you feel like, oh, there's gonna be that big reveal of like this like big huge crime that they're like waiting to the end to like shock us with. And I wasn't surprised. I felt like, oh, okay, that was really underwhelming when you find out what happens. So I just feel like I didn't like the characters and the built up of anticipation. My anticipations weren't met, so I was just disappointed and bored. Number 6 is Frankly in Love by David Yoon. This was a total cover buy. I really like the bold colors on the cover matching with the purple sprayed edges. Like, I was just like, ooh, the colors on this. And sadly, the story doesn't live up to the boldness of the cover. This is about Frank Lee. He is a Korean American who has a crush and is dating a Caucasian girl, Brittany, and his racist parents don't accept that. And we have Joy, who is a family friend's daughter, who is dating, I think, Woo, who is Chinese American, and her parents also do not accept that. And so the two of them, Joy and Frank, hatch a plan to pretend to be secretly dating each other while dating their actual respective boyfriend and girlfriend. First things first, Frank is just an unlikable tryhard. He has a lot of like monologues, and even his dialogue is just very like awkward and try hard, and you're just like, stop, Frank, stop. And he just wasn't my cup of tea. He didn't sound like a teenager. I was just not into Frank. And this is just a personal preference, but I don't particularly like reading about cheating in romance novels. It's just a trope, or like, I guess, a thing that happens that I am not fond of. It really like kind of turns me off from the story most of the time. And I think the biggest thing that really like bothered me about this is that there are kind of really no redeeming Korean Americans across all generations in this. There's a lot of scenes where they show very traditional and conservative Koreans, and in one way or another they're prejudiced or racist, and othering. And there's one scene where like an older Korean is mean to like a Korean American, and it's like, really? There's no one that's redeeming, no one that's good, nice, or kind in the Korean American community? Like, there is a twist in the story, I would say like 3/4 in. And it's not like I love the twist, but like once the twist happens, the story like turns around and becomes interesting again. However, this doesn't solve the issue of the fact that I was already really over the book by the time the twist happens and makes the story interesting again. Oh, and then just a random thing. Of course, they're like all AP kids, this group of Korean Americans, and during the section where they find out which college they got accepted into, the story just stops name dropping universities, and I don't see why that was necessary. Like, why? It felt like a waste of time, like just lines and lines of names of university. And yeah, I don't know why I remembered that, but I remember that I didn't really like it. Number 5 is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I've said this before and I'll say this again. I have a love-hate relationship with Christina Lauren's books. They're either like super great or they're just very disappointing. And I don't know what happened this year, but I read 2 Christina Lauren books and they both ended up disappointing me. It was hard to decide whether Love and Other Words or The Honey Don't List disappointed me, like which one disappointed me more. But I think I came to the conclusion that with The Honey Don't List, I was more so bored. With Love and Other Words, it actually made me mad, thus like being the bigger disappointment of the two. In the story, we have Macy and Elliot, who are childhood best friends. Due to something, they stopped talking for 11 years, just no contact. And they bump into each other after 11 years. And in short, this couple just suffers from a lot of lack of communication, and that is the entire premise of their relationship. They just don't tell each other what they're feeling, what they're doing, and it's really, really infuriating reading about their issues because they just literally, the main thing is they just don't talk to each other. So mostly like reading about Elliot and Macy was just very tiring because of how much they like hid from each other in a sense. And there's like one portion of the book that I think kind of struck a chord with me, where I think Elliot is kind of pushing like Macy out of her shell, like telling her like, you gotta stop being so like reticent and whatnot. But I just feel like, you know what, Elliot, you need to leave the introverts alone. If someone wants to be introverted, let them be introverted. Supposedly you love Macy so much and you know her so freaking well. Why are you trying to change her to be like more talkative or social or whatnot? Like, that's not her. And if that's the her you love, like that her does not exist. I'm going on this long path against like Elliot and Macy. So we're gonna move on to number 4. Number 4 is Sun, which is the 4th book in the Giver Quartet written by Lois Lowry. I read The Giver in middle school for required reading, and I loved it when I read it. Like, I was so eager to like discuss it, and I remember that feeling of like being really eager to discuss it in like those class discussions. And it wasn't really until like later in life that I found out it was a series. And so I decided to reread the first book, loved it, and then complete the series in its entirety. And I really shouldn't have done that, because I should have just kept it with the first book and loved the first book, because I think all the subsequent books after just did not match up to the level of excitement I had. So there's like some ups and downs, but mainly I just felt like this fourth book was probably the weakest. And how to like, so it's the fourth book in the series, and it ties back into the first book, and you know, obviously ties all the books together as well. So it serves its purpose. It gives us, it answers any like remaining questions you might have, and it also serves its purpose in giving us like a lame happy ending. Number 3 is The Circle by Dave Eggers. The way people talk about The Circle, I was like ready to be mind blown. Like I was ready to be surprised and shocked and be like, wow, this is the best book ever. But nothing really happens. It's kind of boring, and May is a very flat main character, and honestly, this is the prime example for me of like just a very intriguing concept, a fantastic premise, just failing and lacking in execution. In short, this is about May, who gets hired by like a big tech company, and her life changes, she feels like for the better, but like the deeper that she like goes into this company, the more public her life like becomes increasingly, and the story goes from there but doesn't really go much anywhere. Number 2 is Jacob Have I Loved by Catherine Patterson. Now this book really hurt me, because I love The Bridge to Terabithia, and I love The Great Gilly Hopkins. I think Hopkins. And it's written by the same author, and those two books are really great. And so this year I was like, let me pick up another book by her and I'll probably love it. But I didn't. Jacob. So this is set in a very small, secluded island town, and it's mainly about Sarah, who has a twin sister, Caroline, who is, she feels like the better twin, and she's just trying to do what she can to stand out from her better twin. And mainly there are a lot of things in this book that have not aged well, and there were certain scenes, certain actions that kind of irked me, and I would even push the envelope to say kind of disgusted me, and I just feel like should not fly. We are at number 1 right now. So number 1 is The Summer I Turned Pretty. This is the first book in a trilogy written by Jenny Han. I loved the To All the Boys trilogy. I loved the books, and I loved the movies on Netflix. And then I heard, well, first of all, I'm excited for the Kitty spin-off, but that's a different story. So yes, Amazon is making this trilogy into, I think, a mini-series, I believe. I'm not sure. But yes, there's going to be a live action. So I heard that and I was like, ooh, exciting. Let me get the book and read it. And it just didn't work for me. I will definitely still give the show a chance, and I'm still excited for that. But I feel like, honestly, I have really nothing to add to The Summer I Turned Pretty. If you like just go on Goodreads and or any like book review that gave The Summer I Turned Pretty like a low or negative rating or review, I feel like I pretty much feel the exact same way as all those other people. And the main issue is just that this book reads like YA of that time. If you catch my drift, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So there's obviously like a love triangle between a very bland boy and then a very jerky boy. And there's family drama, there's growing pains. And this wasn't terrible per se. it just did not hold on to my attention whatsoever. And I pushed through to finish it because it's Jenny Han and I love To All the Boys, so why wouldn't I love The Summer I Turned Pretty? But I was listening to this at such a fast speed just to get through this, and I feel like that's why it ended up here at the #1 spot of most disappointing, because it was mainly the characters didn't draw me in, the plot didn't hold my attention. I did not like the ending. Like, the conclusion kind of pissed me off, and that was the only time the book was able to like pull any emotion from me, sadly. And I, like, you know, talked about this a little bit earlier, that there's just sometimes YA books that come into my life and make me feel too old and too jaded of an adult to enjoy, and this is probably like that situation. That's it. That's the most disappointing books I read in 2021, the top 10. And maybe tomorrow I will do my favorites, and then after that I will do my DNF list, and that should be it for my year-end video series. And outro time. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in my next video whenever that is. Bye!